Hello, everybody. I know everybody's getting logged on. Good afternoon. We're still waiting for our guest to join us. Fingers crossed, I hope she didn't get called into court or some weird thing, but you never know. How's everybody doing today? I'm waiting for Arlene. I'm like, come on, Arlene. Here's our guest. So we'll just give everybody a couple minutes to get logged on, and then we will start with our questions, because God knows I even have some for today. I do see our guest is here. Let me see if I can't get Arlene in here. Hello, Miss Val. Just trying to get everybody logged on. And then we'll let Sasha give us what's going on in the industry right now, what's happening with the system, and then be able to answer some questions as well, I'm sure. Here we go. Now everybody's joining in. Okay. If you guys are just joining us, we're just giving everybody a chance to get logged on, and we'll go from there. Good afternoon, all. LA City Housing and Homelessness Committee is scheduled to discuss a rent increase, freeze, and eviction moratorium at 2:30. I have a hard time with sorry, why does somebody always try to call me right in the middle? I have a hard time with them trying to do a rent increase freeze and an eviction freeze. Why? Because George Clooney doesn't have a problem paying his rent. For the most part, the people impacted by these fires were median to high incomes, and those medium to high incomes, for the most part, have insurance, etc. And we, as in help thy neighbor, love thy neighbor, we the people at AGLA are advertising our vacancies and doing everything that we can within our power to help the victims of the fire. So if you have vacancies in LA County, I encourage you to list them on AGLA's website. We have been able to help several victims of the fire directly. And it's been a great resource. Like I was telling you guys last week, I have the victims of the Eaton fire that I'm connected to through a family member. And with that being said, having those connections, I'm feeding them the information that AGLA is feeding me, and it's going right to the source. So amen to AGLA for putting together a program and for all of us trying to help thy neighbor. It's something that just doesn't happen anymore. We just don't see it anymore. Sorry, everybody. That light is driving me crazy. Okay, so it looks like I'm getting everybody in here. For those of you that have been paying attention, following what's going on, I'm going to have Sasha talk to us about what's happening in the legal aspects of things we can watch out for, and we'll go from there. Sasha, are you there and on with us this morning? I see you there. We unmute you. Yes. Hi, how are you? I haven't seen you yet this year, so Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New I mean, as happy as the new year can be thus far.
Right. Considering.
I never know if technically in February you stopped saying it, but even in January it was like dicey to be saying Happy New Year.
We had so much happening with those fires. I mean, it just kind of wiped out a whole month from us, unfortunately, but getting back on track.
Yes. Okay, so do you want me to just kind of go in? And someone watches my channel. Thank you. I know I have to upload more.
Well, you don't know about this, but we talk about you every week.
I did not know. Is this my fan club actually secretly?
We like the fact that you're honest enough to tell us that your opinion is you think that the system, the way that it's working right now, is broken. We all agree with that. And we all agree with going around the cash for keys. So with that said, Sasha, welcome to your people.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm gonna just sort of go into some of the updates that I know for what's going on regarding the wildfires. I guess I will plug my newsletter if you aren't on it. If you go to my website, struthers.legal, I have a weekly newsletter where I pull basically the latest real estate news, local, state, federal. And then I usually do a lot of informative little articles about cash for keys. Sometimes they get republished in the AGLA Apartment Age magazine. But I do make the effort to send the newsletter once a week with the latest in news. So I'm tracking what's going on with the Board of Supervisors, with LA City Council, and what's going on with the governor and his latest orders. So I will start at a state level from what I know. There was a new executive order signed by the governor yesterday. Some of the things in that order included exempting some zip codes from the price gouging measure, because a lot of landlords were taking their luxury housing basically offline because they weren't going to accept HUD for a house that was not tied to HUD. You're not going to go rent a home in Brentwood for HUD prices. So he excluded some zip codes from that so that landlords would feel more comfortable putting those houses on the market for lease. He included 3 more zip codes as part of the sort of the fire zones. So it protects them from price gouging as well as from the predatory sort of offer practices that he's prohibiting. And then the other thing that he included in this, let me pull it up because on the top of my head, I can't quite remember, but there was 3 main things he put in there. But he is sort of tweaking the rules because he realizes, or, as people sort of cried out about it, that you can't have these blanket measures, as Patty opened with. You have very different economic people that are displaced. You have, medium income people, you have middle class people, and you have extremely wealthy people. So, and then the price gouging measures apply to all leases, not just leases for 1 year. So there's, landlords that were doing 366 days, they were doing 18 months. So he wanted to change that from the 1 year requirement to just any lease. So all leases of any duration are subject to the price gouging measures. So some people were working around that, but he sort of coupled that with excluding sort of this luxury housing market so that those landlords, again, would feel more comfortable putting their houses on the market.
Well, here at Widget's Way, our theory is we don't look good in orange.
Well, I mean, if you're a landlord, you're kind of already in that boat. You're borderline guilty until proven innocent.
Right,
You
right.
were ever to a city council meeting, you sort of feel that way. If you go to the
So
board of
exactly. So we try to stay on the 9% or less, just to err on the side of caution.
I think all landlords do that.
Yes.
Or at least like that's kind of the rule of thumb, right? The understating, I don't want to get in trouble. I want margin of error room. So the Board of Supervisors, they have this no faults, or you can't evict for unauthorized occupants and pets through May 31st, 2026. There's really not a measure or rules about it having to be tied to the wildfire. It's sort of this blanket, just no evicting for it. LA City Council also has that where you can't evict for unauthorized pets and occupants, and you also can't raise rent for unauthorized pets and occupants. So City Council came up with that for a year. So that would be, I think, through around mid-January next year. And then they're going to be voting on, again, the eviction moratorium and the rent increase freeze, which neither one of those really makes sense because there's 2 kind of cities, right, that were affected by this. We have, Altadena, the Eaton fire, we have the Pacific Palisades fire. They're completely different pools of tenancy, and not all of them are going to be living in Los Angeles. So in my opinion, it didn't quite make sense, like why you would tell a landlord, for instance, in South LA, that they couldn't raise rents when these people are by and large not going to be moving to South LA. So yeah, you have, more tenants. A lot of those people have insurance that is going to cover rent.
Yes.
A
And
lot,
furnishings.
Yeah, a lot of people are, not a lot of people, there's gonna be some tenants that are gonna be housing unauthorized occupants. So it's like if you raise it just the annual rent increase, you're already not gonna be allowed to get the increase you would get for an additional occupant. So at least give them, the rent increase they're allowed to get. So I don't see a correlation between there's this fire and now landlords can't get annual rent increases. I'm just not seeing the connection there. But they're again going to vote on it. This is like the third time they're going to be talking about it. So I think they also sort of understand there's a lack of correlation there and there's a lot of pushback. So I believe that it's going to be today. We'll see what happens with that. If I get an update, I'll put it in my newsletter. There is an assembly bill that's proposing to freeze Costa-Hawkins in Los Angeles County for a year. That's going to be voted on February 15th. I don't think it's going to go anywhere for two reasons. One, what I just said, it doesn't make sense. There's no correlation between not getting market rent if you have a vacant unit and victims of a fire. Like that just doesn't make sense. There's already a price gouging measure in place by the governor. And then also, we literally just voted as a state that we didn't want that. We literally just said that was basically Prop 33 was to repeal that. And we literally said, we don't want to repeal Costa-Hawkins. So I don't think that that's going to get traction. But again, I think it's one of those feel-good legislation things. I'm going to have it linked in my newsletter. There's a contact form so you can reach out to the assembly member, Brian, and voice your concerns about that and say, hey, this is going to be devastating to me. We don't want this. So at least the commentary is there. Same thing with the board of supervisors, same thing with city council. If you can't show up to those meetings, at least email council members, email the board of supervisors. You can do public comment on the website of the board of supervisors. I've done that. They give you like half a second to talk and you get cut off. So sometimes writing the public comments a lot better, but sort of flooding that sort of avenue with people rushing in and saying, hey, this is going to be devastating helps, because last week a bunch of landlords came out and I do think that helped. I do think it helped at city council that landlords were there saying, hey, you did this to us for 4 years. Not every time there's a problem, can you put it on the landlord's back? Like all the landlords collectively did not set the Palisades or, Altadena on fire. Landlords collectively did not cause COVID-19, yet they shouldered the brunt of that with rent increases they couldn't get, with tenants that gamed the system, with rent that they were never going to get. It was
we fronted the financial burden.
Yes. And, another thing is that the way that they sort of go about housing in California, and I'll say Los Angeles, because California, as much as they have laws, they're a little more neutral than the aggressive approach that you get at a local level. And it really, every time they pass new legislation, it creates a barrier of entry for new landlords to come in. It's more expensive to comply with it. It's more risky to comply with it. We're all dealing in LA City with the minimum rent threshold that tenants are already taking advantage of. And especially if you have a tenant, like a Section 8 tenant, where Section 8 pays a portion and the tenant pays a portion. It could be 4, 5, 6 months, if not a year, before the tenant's portion amounts to the minimum threshold. Those are things that they just didn't account for. I have a client who's dealing with it, that he's $100 shy of the threshold to tell the tenant, hey, here's a 3-day notice. Section 8's telling him go serve a 3-day, but the city says he can't because he's about $100 short. The tenant has paid rent in 3 months. So there's all these things that they've done. And I'm hoping with that, they sort of leave it there because they've already given tenants so much protection. I don't see how a rent increase freeze or an eviction moratorium is going to do anything other than create more gamesmanship in the environment. But again, that's my 2 cents on that. We'll see what the city council sees or feels or believes. It hasn't deterred evictions. If tenants are violating the lease and not paying rent, the landlord is eventually going to evict for that, as they should. As far as other things go, I'm sure, there's the price gouging measure that's in place, whether it's you've already listed the property for rent in the past year or it hasn't been listed. So I've had clients who have done cash for keys, like in Santa Monica, West Hollywood, and they did them late last year, so now it's time to roll around to leasing, and the price gouging measures have prevented landlords from listing because they go, look, the market rent is $3,000 above what HUD has, so I can't. I literally just spent 30,000, 20,000, 60,000 in a case to buy out these tenants to get market rent, and now we have this price gouging measure. So a lot of those landlords are just going, I'm not putting it on the market until we get past this price gouging measure, which I did see an article come out that there's thousands of vacant houses, there's thousands of vacant units because landlords don't want to rent them. And
Yes.
the article missed in that is landlords don't want to rent them because they don't want to be landlords anymore. They don't want to be dealing with tenants that are not going to pay rent. They don't want to be dealing with tenants in general. We
Yep.
have the new rent registry requirement in LA City. So if you have a non-RSO property, by the end of the month, you're supposed to register the property. It's $31.05. I'm almost certain you cannot pass that fee on to the tenant, though you can when you have like an RSO unit. This is a fee that you absorb on your own, which again, $31 isn't a make or break fee, but it's this thing that they're taxing the landlord essentially because there's no tenant fee. And the
Well, my
tenant's not
my my
paying
theory
into
is they're going to get their hook in us and then change the rules just like the DCBA did.
the DCBA is a mess.
Well, look who runs it.
Well, it's five incredibly powerful women who have really just not listened to anybody. And there's like maybe one person on the board of supervisors that like can kind of go, I guess I see the landlord point, but they really don't get it. We lack in LA County and all the local jurisdictions in it like a basic understanding of supply and demand. Um, Barger kind of pseudo understands landlords, but she still caves a lot of the time. Um, but we have sort of this like they won't listen to logic and they just keep jamming legislation down all these property owners' throats, and then they're like stunned when they still don't see progress. Or they won't admit that there's progress. Like having a bunch of new housing has in fact leveled off rents. It's not going to level off rents for a mansion in Brentwood, but
No,
that's also a very small pool of people who rent there. But
right.
by and large, apartment rents have leveled off. Some of them have even gone down. Like in South LA, vacancies are pretty high. Rents have gone down because people don't want to live there. And landlords have been extremely careful on who they put into rentals, because I had a client last year move in one building, moved in 6 tenants and evicted 6 tenants because they didn't pay rent. They paid it, they looked good on paper, they had the security deposit, no problem. And then after 2, 3 months, they hit the threshold and they were being evicted. And 1 month's rent was below the threshold.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of like no one wants to admit the efficiency, right? The thresholds are higher in some areas than the rents are.
Yeah.
The rents do, when you put more units online and you do allow this development where it should go, having supply, does help with the rent prices. But also you're in LA. Like if you want cheap rent, you by all means can go live in Wisconsin. You'll have miserable winters. You'll have cheap rent. So it's sort of this, they want to suspend beliefs in reality, but they want to like have their cake and eat it too. And they want no landlord to have cake, but they want the landlord to bake the cake, provide the cake, put frosting on the cake, deliver the cake, cut it for you, put it on a nice platter, and then like, get a tip at the end. So it's a really weird environment we're in. And when the fires happened, I anticipated exactly what's happening to happen, which was going to be a lot of feel good legislation. It was going to be a lot of focusing immediately on the landlord. And so we're sort of in a waiting game every single week to figure out what city council is going to be doing. What are they going to say? What's going to happen? I'm sure landlords have already done rent increases. A bulk of the rent increases happened, like for one client, happened effective February 1st. So luckily those already were processed, but I'm hoping fingers crossed that they don't mess with rent increases. It's bad enough that you can't increase for additional occupants and you can't evict for these people. But I also suspect that's not going to be a huge influx on landlords. As much as there's these communities that have now tenants, I don't necessarily think all these people are going to be living in your apartments or being renters in that sense. So even though that is the law, I don't think it's going to be incredibly problematic, but I do think that it's going to be an issue for landlords because tenants can be advantageous, situations can be advantageous, but I don't think it's going to be a huge problem. But it is definitely something that when you have these sort of disasters, they immediately turn to the landlord and start
Yep.
taking landlord rights away. And that's something that we saw during COVID, and I knew that was going to be the trend going forward for the reasonable future.
Unfortunately, yes, it
Yeah.
is the world we live in. Or the state we live in.
Yes, it's kind of specifically the state.
Yeah.
Um, and I think also it doesn't help that we are inundated with news all the time, and it's not quite frankly news that we get, it's more opinion. Um, so, LA has a very specific opinion, right? People here have a very specific opinion. We have a very progressive board of supervisors. We have a very progressive city council. Those are the two arguably most powerful jurisdictions, maybe on the planet. I mean, they govern a very important economy on the planet, which is Los Angeles. And they know that, and they tool with it all the time for their political advantage. But I will say, and I tell it to everybody, you sort of, not sort of, you do have an obligation as a property owner to show up to these meetings, to reach out to council members, to be involved in associations. Like I'm part of AGLA as well. You have to like show up for yourself in the same way that the tenants show up for themselves.
Make your voice be heard.
A lot of those people are actually hired protesters, but nonetheless, you sort of have to be there because it's very easy for them to sort of attack landlords as a whole and claim that everybody's this corporate monster. It's not so hard when you have, a mom and pop landlord there saying, look, this is my retirement. This is what I did. This is what I worked for. I'm trying to have generational wealth for my kids. I've done everything that I could, and like I'm being attacked. And everyone here is a mom and pop landlord. So I think that makes a huge difference because a lot of these things have passed because landlords just weren't there protesting it. And they highlight that. Um,
Yeah.
they go, hey, look, a landlord's not here saying no to this. So they seem to be okay with it. And I get landlords are afraid of retaliation. I hear that a lot. I've seen, landlords get retaliated against. It's not a particularly great feeling, but it's also sort of you have to risk those things for the greater good and even for your own greater good. But yeah, there's definitely it's an awkward position to be a property owner in LA. Like, I don't know what better to say. Like it is, it's just awkward.
It is,
Like,
especially in these times, it definitely is. Do me a favor and tell some of our members what it is you do with your cash for keys. They're very interested. I can't talk enough about you, and I'll be honest with you. People ask me all the time, is there an attorney out there you trust? Yeah, call this one because she knows the system's broken. She'll tell you it's broken. She admits it. I That makes me trust her. So I know you don't do evictions because you know the
oh,
system's broken, and they're all going to ask you. So we'll just start with that. I don't do evictions, but
I
please tell
don't.
us what you do. Help us, honey.
Yes. So I do cash for keys. So I do tenant buyouts. I do them in sort of the main two reasons is either you have a low rent unit that you want to buy the tenant out, rehab the unit and get market rent. It's, by and large, kind of the most common way. More and more, I do buyouts because owners just want to sell and they have a tenant in place. So they have a tenant in place and maybe, like a duplex where, hey, I live in one unit, I can live that vacant, but this tenant's paying really low rent. I want to buy them out. Or you have a single family residence that's tenant occupied, but there's these just cause eviction restrictions. And so you want to do the buyout, get the tenant to voluntarily agree to move out, and then be able to list the property vacant, because we're also in an awkward housing market, and having a tenant occupied house makes it even that much more difficult to be able to sell your property. Because as someone who's buying, houses are not really income property at purchase, they become income property. Like a lot of houses you probably lived in at one point, and then you moved out and you go, instead of selling it, I'll rent it. So the people who are buying them by and large so they can live in them. It's probably going to be their starter home, or maybe their level up home. So it's for them to own or occupy, and banks require people to own or occupy. So a lot of times the tenant becomes sort of the sticking point. So a lot of landlords come to me and they want me to negotiate the buyout before they even list it. So the two main things that I do, I represent landlords doing the negotiations on behalf of the landlord, so presenting the offer to the tenant, doing the back and forth with them, drafting up the agreement, filing it if it's applicable. I also help landlords who maybe don't want to have the attorney do it. They have some sort of rapport with the tenant, or they've sort of started the negotiations with the tenant. They don't want to throw someone in there. So I will I'll guide the client through sort of, here's how you should do the counter offer, here's what you should say. And then I draft the agreement for them, because every tenant knows like there's going to be a buyout agreement. Like they get it. There's going to be a contract at some point. So those are the things that I do. Yeah, I think I covered that.
Okay. So, at any time we could contact you, and I understand that it's better once we decide that yes, cash for keys buyout is something that we definitely want to do. It is a better business practice for all of my landlords to not attempt to do that on their own out of the gate, especially if the relationship is a little rocky, and just come to you directly so that we don't mess up the relationship any worse and just hand you the ball. I think I want to push that of don't go try this first and then call you, because
Yes,
sometimes that's too
don't do that,
late.
because I've had people call me, and it makes me so sad. I had a guy call me who his real estate agent helped him with a buyout, and they didn't do it according to Pasadena. So the tenant signed the agreement, she took the money, she moved, and then hired a lawyer and said, hey, the agreement's void because you didn't give me the disclosure and you didn't file it. And so he was like, I wish I had known about you before. And so definitely set up a consultation with me. I do half-hour consultations. It's well worth it. Just to have an idea, we can come up with a game plan. I will put my contact info in the little chat box to everyone.
Yes, because everybody's asking. I was going to ask you to do that.
Let me put my website.
You're perfect. You do you, baby.
I'm going to put, you can sign up for my newsletter. It's on the homepage, but I'll also put the contact page in here.
Perfect.
Actually, you could sign up for the newsletter on top of every page. So that's where you can go ahead and schedule a consultation with me. We can do it directly on the website. But it's definitely one of those things where, I had a presentation yesterday at a brokerage, and so many real estate agents didn't know the different buyout programs, didn't know the jurisdictions of buyout programs. Some of them didn't know the difference between LA City and LA County unincorporated. So we had a little learning lesson about that. Some people didn't know that Brentwood was LA City. So it was very eye-opening to me that it does get very complicated. It does get it does get sort of if you're not in it every day, Patty and I are in it every day. So we know. I've had, clients who did evictions. I had a case years ago where the landlord's eviction attorney thought the property was in San Fernando City, but in fact it was San Fernando, but it was LA City. So then they had to dismiss the eviction and do all the stuff because it was during COVID. So there was all these rules, and then they got sued and the tenants wouldn't leave. It was a whole mess. The insurance was involved. I was involved. The eviction attorney was involved. It was just a mess because they just didn't know. The eviction attorney didn't know, and the client didn't know because the deed said San Fernando City, but in fact it was actually an LA City property. So there's just sort of stuff that it gets a little convoluted. So you want to make sure especially Culver City. I have people who contact me that they're in Culver City, but it's actually LA City. But it says Culver City, but it's LA City. And like I've had it where I'm doing a buyout now. The tenant thinks they're in Culver City jurisdiction, but they're actually in LA City jurisdiction. And so it's like one of those
I
things
get it.
where it's
I
like
get
it
it.
gets it gets thorny, it gets a little complicated. But definitely if you have a buyout situation or you're thinking about doing it, it helps to just do the consultation with me because we can go over it. I can get a feel for your situation, your tenant, what area you're in, then we can talk about sort of, best practices, best method, and then sort of the strategy going forward with it.
Correct. And you guys all need to know one thing, and Sasha will back me up on this. If you're going to do a cash for keys contract, I'm in the understanding that only 4 people are allowed to do that: the owner of record, a broker, an agent working under a broker, and an attorney. So only those 4 people is, to the best of my knowledge. Sasha's agreeing with me. I just want to make sure nobody goes out there and signs up for a lawsuit. Okay. We don't need to do that. So if you're going to do this, please make sure you're doing it properly. Sasha, this is her field. This is her area of expertise. She knows whether or not they have to have this in writing in their primary language, whether or not they have 45 days to rescind the offer. She knows this. This is her wheelhouse, just like management is mine, okay? So in the event you need to do a cash for keys, I can't encourage you enough to contact her directly. Talk to her about it before you talk to the tenant. She is step 1, not step 2. Got it? Let her be your step 1. Let her be your first point of contact. Let her go do what it is us negotiators do best and try to get you the least amount of money and the least amount of time, because that's what we're after when we're going to bat for you, because we know we're landlords too, remember? We have a foot in this game. Val's asking if you do LA County only, or do you do other counties? Most of her stuff is in Kern County.
I do buyouts anywhere. Kern County doesn't have a rent control, doesn't have a buyout program, so not an issue. So I can do a buyout. It's not that difficult. Most of my business is in LA because that's where buyouts is sort of LA, San Francisco. They stemmed from rent control. That's how they came to be.
It's
There would
where
be
it's
no
all
buyouts if there wasn't really rent control. But
right.
yes, now that we have sort of state level rules and things like that, I can do buyouts anywhere.
Okay, so Val, when you're looking to do a cash for keys and get your tenants out of a problem, you can always call Sasha. And you guys, if you're calling her, make sure you tell her you're a member of Widget's Way, because then she's going to know that I've probably helped you line up all your ducks properly, and this might be relatively not as difficult as others. And I'll leave my statement as that.
Yes.
Sometimes they're extremely challenging. Yes, it would be for a crappy tenant, she says. It
Oh
usually
yeah, the
is.
crap. Well, the nuisance tenant is always, it's an interesting one. It's a very case by case thing. But that tends to be, I mean, more and more tenants borderline ask to be bought out. Um, it's very interesting. I get clients all the time that they tell, like I have a client with a house in Pasadena, and the tenant goes, "Hey, can we buy the house?" He goes, "Yeah, but I want this." And they go, "Okay, well, we can't pay that." "Okay, so are you going to move out, or what are you going to do?" "Oh, yeah, we'll move out." Then there's a follow-up email. "Oh, we need buyout money. We found out that we should get buyout money." And then, we want this. And they start so tenants borderline say it. They're very maybe passive aggressive or direct about it. "Just pay me to move. I don't want to be here." I have another case where, the tenant brought up radon. And my client was like, "What? You need to remediate radon." You're like, "What do you mean remediate radon? I've never heard of this." And he's
On
Googling, he's
gas.
like, I don't know. That happens in winter. Like, I don't have to remediate that. So the tenant's going, sending these long-winded emails and is very passive aggressive. Like, I get you don't want to be a landlord. Like, I don't blame you. We have so many rights. Blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, oh God. You sort of deal with it, but a lot of times tenants will be like, "Just pay me to move."
That's what they want. We just
Oh
got to
yes.
find out what their number is.
That's
Chris,
always that's always the thing, is the number.
They want the money, exactly. Chris has a question. Do you do relocation assistance fees when there is just cause like family?
I don't do that when you're going to do an owner occupancy. I don't do those applications. That's an eviction attorney. Someone asked if I know one. I used to recommend, a few, but more and more they became so busy with evictions that I truly don't know who to recommend anymore, that I could say, like, I've worked with them, I know them. I just don't. The attorneys are so busy. You can reach out to AGLA. They might have, it's a few attorneys that they know could be helpful for your thing. I just simply don't know any. And I've been trying to help landlords, but I don't have that resource.
So wait a minute, you guys just heard the same thing come out of her that you hear out of me. I'm not going to recommend an attorney. Pick your own legal counsel unless you're trying to do cash for keys, then call Sasha and avoid the system because it's broken. In the event she cannot arrange a cash for keys, your next choice is eviction. And unfortunately, we're not going to tell you which way to go because it's all broken. We're going to try to avoid that before we get there, remember?
That was an issue that came up with a client of mine. And it was like so beyond frustrating. My client bought a fourplex during COVID and didn't know and didn't ask me, but bought this fourplex to move his family into it. But during COVID, you couldn't own or occupy in LA City, if you all remember. So he waited and, he did buyout offers and he told the tenants, hey, I'll buy you out. So one tenant goes, I want $500,000 because my apartment is my forever home, which don't know what that means. And the other tenant said, we tentatively reached a deal. And then he started yelling at me that I was ripping him off, giving him the highest end of the relocation chart, and that he wanted like 60,000 or 80,000. So my client was like, forget it. So COVID's over, and the one tenant and the other, the one unit became protected because they were disabled and lived there over 10 years. So they couldn't move out. So the other unit, there were two bedrooms, and the owner needed 2 bedrooms. So the other one, he does the owner occupancy packet. He files it with the city, does it all on the up and up. And the eviction attorney, not naming names, files the eviction, and there's a typo. So they get all the way to like June. So this is like you're supposed to move out in February. Now we're like May, June, and they're like, look, we got to dismiss it because there's a typo in the notice.
We got to start over.
And the tenant's attorney is telling the tenant, by the way, you should move out. You're supposed to move out. They're going to owner occupy. We redo the packet, and there was a technicality that I had told the attorney. I go, look, the applications were done for the mom to move downstairs and the children to move upstairs. But because the mom can't move downstairs because that tenant's protected, we're going to swap them because the mom needs housing the most. Mom is a U.S. citizen, but she is a dual citizen of here in El Salvador. She's in El Salvador, but like every one of her kids has taken on living with mom. So my client bought the building because he goes, yo, my mom is a strong, independent woman and she needs her own unit. And we're going to put it here. It's close to where my kids go to school. It was the perfect thing. So I say, do we need to do a new declaration with the city to change the owner, the occupancy? No. We get all the way to like November, December, and the judge goes, look, you can't change qualified family members. Dismiss it. And my client goes, I'm fucking selling the building. Forget it. Forget the whole thing. I'm selling it. He spent over a year trying to own or occupy. And if not one technicality or another. And during the process, the attorney goes, we want to depose your 85-year-old mother to confirm she's going to be moving into the apartment. And he goes, my mom lives in El Salvador. I'm not having my mom get deposed so that I can exercise my right as the owner of this building to move my mom in. I'm not doing that. They're like, well, you're doing it in bad faith. You're doing this, you're doing that. Technicality after technicality. And my client just goes, forget it. I'm just going to sell the building. Meanwhile, the tenant, his grandson is a gangbanger. His son died as a result of gang activity, which there's a vigil outside his unit designated to his son, the tenant downstairs is constantly complaining, look, they're up all night long. They broke into the basement again. There's a bunch of gang members. They're constantly breaking the gate. We're like, I feel really like not great about this. And my client just like, I can't. And the tenant goes, I'll move. Give me $80,000. And so when you go like, oh, I want to own or occupy, I tell people it is on paper, you have rights. It's a completely different and expensive process to exercise your rights, especially in an eviction court, where the judge, oh, no, technicality, you can't do that. Oh, technicality, you can't do that. Oh, you spelled it wrong. Nope, we gotta throw it out. Oh, you changed family members, gotta throw it out.
How much money do we have to spend to prove we're right?
Well, and that's like the seedy underbelly of housing that they have written about time and time and time again. Rent control does not work. In rent controlled areas, you have the most underserved units. The units have the most deferred maintenance and they have the least vacancies. And when you have like vacancy control, which was they're trying to do in California yet again,
Yep.
have the black market, which you can't really do anymore with the internet. And then you have sort of this like de-incentivizing landlords to rent, which is why we have a bunch of vacant units. We have plenty of housing in Los Angeles.
Yep.
I truly, truly believe that.
I
There's
know we do.
plenty of housing. Every single new apartment they build all over, plenty of vacant units, plenty of them. But landlords do not want to risk renting units out to people if they cannot evict them, because it costs more money to not collect rent than it is to collect it. Because I'm out all the rent they didn't pay. I'm out all the rent that I'm not going to get paid during the eviction. I'm out all the attorney's fees, and I've got to cap my attorney's fees because I don't want an attorney going after me. So I got to cap them. You're out all of that money and you waiver and you move out.
We know that an eviction in this day and age in LA County is a $60,000 to $80,000 word. By the time you get through the time you lost, the money you spent in legal fees, and the money you did in relocation settlement agreement, you're looking between 60 and 80,000, if not more, in LA County in an eviction. Scary. And now we have Seb to help us, right? You just learned about that, right? That's awesome that he's there to help us with the financial part of it.
Yes. I mean, that's another thing that has come up too is, I deal with estates that are in probates. They get an administrator and they have, one unit that needs, like one house that has a tenant and they need to get it out, but they don't have the money to buy out the tenant. So it helps having some sort of bridge loan or funding for that, because, you sort of have to eat into your equity, but you're going to build it over time. If you get the unit back and you're able to sort of rehab it, get it to sort of marketable condition, and then you heavily vet your applicants, then yeah, it's a good turnover. It's a good business. And I really don't think that, landlords deserve sort of the bad rap that they get. And I recently saw an article where they debunked the price gouging. They said, look, we have, people that are going to price gouge. That happens, but it's not happening at the volume that people are claiming that it's happening at.
Right.
So, and they don't, in the same article, the woman talked about, she goes, look, rents are leveling off in Los Angeles, but they never highlight it. They never talk about that. They only talk about all the bad things, but they don't talk about how having more housing come online has helped with rents. And so there's always an economic opportunity to, get a unit back, be able to get the market rent. And there is, a peace of mind when, especially you have tenants that, maybe have good standing tenants, but they have really cheap rent and you want to own or occupy, which was, the case for my client here. There's only 4 units, only 2 of them had 2 bedrooms. And the tenants all joined LA Tenant Union, by the way, in this fourplex.
Of course.
They all joined it. And then they sent a letter to my client's home. Like before he was doing the owner occupancy, but after he had done the buyout offers, they joined the LA Tenant Union. They have the LA Tenant Union signs in their window. And then they sent a letter to my client's home. Like to his home, and was like, basically, you're a piece of shit landlord and we're tenants now and we're in a union and you have to do all of this laundry list of stuff and we demand you take down the security cameras. And we're like, no,
They're not
not the
secure.
security cameras, the surveillance cameras.
There you go.
Take down the surveillance cameras. And we're like, no.
No.
But I don't want to say like all tenants are bad, because landlords are in the business of renting. You're not in the business of vacancies. So it's not that all tenants are bad and advantageous and they're going to ruin your life, because then it's like, you shouldn't be here on this call and you
Right.
should sell and never be a landlord again. So I don't want to be defeated about it. But I do think that there has to be, or it's unfortunately changed where landlords sort of being nice. I'm not going to raise your rent. I'm going to, gloss over that you're not adhering to the lease. Sort of has to change. And I've told, clients, I go, look, if you feel good about not raising the rent and the tenants, pat you on the back and say, thank you, great. But do not do favors with real estate that you can't absorb, because there's not going to be a day where you're going to turn around and tell the tenant, hey, I've subsidized your rent by not raising it. I need you to move out. Not going to happen, because they're going to be going to market rent and they're really, really attached to their low rent. So it sounds good in theory, but understand, by not raising rent, by being an overly nice landlord, by coddling your tenant, you are in fact subsidizing them, because you're creating that much more room between them and reality on the outside.
So I have a rule and it goes like this: raise your rent every year, even if it's only by $20. Do it so that you stay in a position of power and they don't. If you don't do that and remind them every year that you're the one in power, they will challenge you.
My friend texted me the other day. He goes, they raised my rent like 6.5%. And I go, yeah, I go, you're in a non-RSO unit in Palms, by Culver City.
Yeah.
And I go, they could have raised it 8.9% on you. He goes, oh, okay. So you got lucky because they raised it less than what they could have raised it on you. And he's like, oh, okay, then I'm okay with that. I was like, yeah.
You need to be okay with that.
You need to be okay with it. I mean, you could go back and say you made an error and you want to bump further. Otherwise, take the 6.5%.
All right. And smile about it.
And it's funny because he tells me, he goes, man, my management company is on it. Like there was an illegal Airbnb and those people were gone.
Yep.
Like they caught them, they busted them, and they were out. Like, if there's any complaints, they fix it right away. My favorite was he called me, or he sent me a photo of his sink and it's like peeling. And I go, oh yeah, put in a work order for reglazing. He goes, is that what that's called? I go, yeah, you need to reglaze the sink. So I was there. He was like on the phone calling management, like, hi, yeah. I need my sink reglazed. And he's like looking at me like, is that the word? And they're like, yeah, okay, we'll come out Tuesday. He's like, oh, okay. So it's like, but I go, look, you're getting a rent increase, but you admit your management is on top of it. He goes,
corporate America does.
That's like kind of a good point. I'm like, uh-huh. And he's like pro landlord because he himself is going to inherit some real estate. So he will kind of be a landlord. That's sort of his plan.
Right.
But he does get it. So tenants are not like anti-landlord. A lot of tenants do get hey, I get this is a business. I get that you want to get market rent. I get that I'm under market. So there is that flexibility, that room. And when you present a buyout, it's sort of an opportunity, and it comes down mainly to the main thing. What am I going to get paid to move out?
What's the number, right?
What's the number? And there's all sorts of ways you can sort of trick it. You can do psychology. You can game the negotiation. But it comes down to not really even the move out date, although that's kind of important. It's really tenants find housing way faster than they think they're going to find housing.
Yep.
It comes down to okay, what is it going to cost to get them out? And for you, it's a business decision. For them, it's kind of life-changing because it's like giving them a little lottery ticket that they've never seen before.
Yep. An extra income tax refund.
Kind of, sort of, yes.
Can be. You never know. Okay. So do you recommend that we should not issue rent increases right now in Larso? This is the time of year that I rent increase all my tenants. I say increase it if you can increase
I
it.
would increase it because there's no rent increase moratorium. There's a price gouging measure, but if you have RSO units or even if you have non-RSO, the state already has a ceiling at 10% regardless. So you're already adhering to the price gouging with your rent increase. But I would do it because right now there's no moratorium on it. So, increase your rent. We'll see what happens today. I'm fingers crossed. I have strong doubts that they're going to do a rent increase freeze. Because if they were going to do it, I feel like they would have done it by now. And the fact
I
that
agree.
Board of Supervisors didn't do it, LA City did what Board of Supervisors did, which is like having a moratorium on unauthorized occupants, which I said day one was going to happen. I go,
Yep.
they're going to have a moratorium on it and they're not going to let you raise rent for additional occupants, which they did both. So I already knew that. But the rent increase freeze, I don't think they can justify it.
I don't think they can either. They're going to keep bringing it back to the table, but it just doesn't have enough teeth to stick. I'm getting another question that I don't know if you have the capability of answering just because it may not be your expertise. I think this is a tax question, but I'm going to throw it at you.
Yes.
Clients clients want to know, can they 1099 the tenant for buyout monies?
So for buyout money, that's a tax question. So if your CPA says, hey, we need a W-9 because we're going to 1099 the tenant, I can put that in there that I need the W-9. But I can't tell you if you do or do not need to issue the 1099. You need to talk to your CPA about that. But good to do it sooner rather than later, so it's part of the negotiations, not a surprise at the end for it.
Miriam, yes, I believe Larso max rent increase in LA is currently 4%. I also
4%, 1% gas, 1% electricity.
And then I believe they just did their security deposit interest increase from 0.052% to 4.32% annually.
It's 4.23%.
No, it's 4.32%. This is when Sasha goes, Patty, what are you telling me? I'm throwing up in my mouth right now. Yes, I heard that just went through. That'll be on the next calendar year. It'll go from 0.052% to
4.32%.
This is when you guys get to hear an attorney start bitching. So listen, okay? Because she's
4.32%. I'm not even getting 4.32% at the bank. What do you mean? It went 0.52 to 4.32.
0.052.
No. It was 0.52.
Okay,
Before it was 0.04. I'm looking at the chart. They just put
okay, and now 4.32. So she sees it. Now she's gonna bitch, and you guys can all look in her face while she has a meltdown.
Not like this. All of these micro cuts at landlords, all the micro is why landlords, like, quite frankly, have a distaste for landlording.
Yes.
This is for LA City.
Yes.
RSO.
RSO, not just LA City, anything RSO. So your RSO in San Pedro, your RSO in Torrance, your RSO wherever you have RSO.
Anyway, not depressed enough.
The bank pays under less than 25%.
I've seen bank accounts where it's like, oh, the interest is 13 cents a month on the bank. You're like 4 cents. And I'm like, I'm supposed to go give you that?
Yeah.
No.
I thought you'd appreciate that one.
I think the security deposit increase is tethered to some sort of metrics. I don't think they just sort of come up with it. They tether it probably to the treasury bonds.
They're probably doing it somehow to the CPI and having it to do with the rate of inflation would be my guess.
I love how you have to pay interest for the year above the actual rent increase interest. Granted, I know this is like the year amount, but like still. Like, okay. I like there's basically like, hey, we're trying to just get back, or just trying to give tenants all your rent money back.
Right?
Oh.
Maybe we need to pay them for living there.
Well, that's kind of where it's at. That's the buyout. And
Yeah.
some tenants basically, this is another thing that I caution landlords. And I had a real estate meetup I did the other day. And the people in the group were familiar, they were from the Bay Area and San Diego.
Oh,
And
okay.
they're talking about illegal units. They go, yeah, I rented a few illegal units. And I go, dude, you can't do that. And they're like, what? I go, nah. I go, are they in LA? He goes, no, they're like up, like I'm from like Oakland. I go, dude, if you rented an illegal unit in LA, you'd have an attorney at your door demanding all their rent money be paid back. I go,
For
do
the
not,
course of their tenancy, not just like the past few months.
yeah, don't, don't lease illegal units, illegal conversions. I represented a tenant in a case.
Get
I
your
have represented a few
certificate of
tenants.
occupancy and then collect rent.
But there was a landlord and they bought a triplex and bootlegged a complete fourth unit. And SCEP came around
Oh
and they
no.
go, where, what is this? And they're like, don't worry about it. And it was a fourth unit. And it was a unit that my clients lived in. And my clients tried getting relocation. They go, hey, we looked at the thing and you're supposed to pay us relocation. Just pay us the relocation. And the landlords go, no, we're not. So I represented the tenants and we settled it. But I told the attorney who I work a lot with, I go, what was your client thinking? He goes, I don't know. But they built a whole fourth unit, like to the property line. And I
I
was like
I had a
stunned at the brevity of it. And when you look at it, you're like, okay, they like painted the building so it all matched. But SCEP came around and they go, what is this a unit? I have 3 units here. And I was like, did you think that these people were not going to get busted? And he was like, look, I didn't tell them to build a fourth unit. I did not suggest it. I wasn't
I
like I came up and said, hey, do it.
I
So,
had a I had a landlord that actually in Skep in Larceau turned the laundry room into another unit and the same thing happened.
oh, also you can't add washing machines to units without permits. A client, the same attorney, he had a case and he was telling me about it. His client was an outfit out of Texas and they bought an apartment building in the valley. And they go, dude, you know what we could do? We could add laundry to all these units and get higher market rent.
If you didn't pull a permit, then you can't collect
It
rent.
was like 200 units. It was over
Oh
a
shit.
million dollars. They got into REAP over it. It was over $1 million to legalize all those washers and dryers. They are not going to recoup that
No.
anytime soon. But they
And they
got into
probably
REAP.
put them in reap. Oh no. Oh no.
I mean, it was like a big investment company. I mean, like, big kind of corporate landlord. So they had like the money, but they were like stunned because in Texas, you could just do whatever we want to wash. All right, we'll put
Hey,
washers there.
it's those kind of people we all want to watch over here and not put our foot in the pond.
And it was like $1 million in
Mm-mm,
the permitting process and
mm-mm,
like this the whole thing. It was a mess. And
mm-mm.
so it's like there's just all these things that actually low key as a tenant, I would want in unit laundry. Like I would be rad. But like the city doesn't want you to have any whatever it is, the city hates in unit laundry. I think because of the watering or whatever it is, the city hates in unit laundry. They really will go after a landlord over it. It's pretty wild. But those are sort of tangents that I have of like just random
Hey,
landlord
we all have
things
them.
gone
It's
wrong.
okay. It's okay. We are right up on the hour. I don't want to keep Sasha any longer than we need to. If anybody has any question that we need to ask her why we got her,
I'm
let's.
gonna link the bulletin that shows the new the new security deposit increase that
Okay, perfect,
Patty was talking about. They have the LAHD has the new bulletin on it.
perfect, perfect.
I
And
do have a question for Patty if you know this, because
okay,
I've seen this come up as a defense in an eviction.
Okay.
Are tenants bringing up security deposit interest?
Yes.
And how are they doing it? And how is that sort of panning out?
Your security deposit interest should be allocated annually. It's a requirement under RSO that you pay them that interest payment annually. You can either cut them a check or give them a credit on their ledger. A credit on their ledger seems to work out well because at some point or another, they're probably going to owe something on their ledger, so one can wash out the other. I don't personally like to give them a check. I have other owners that like to give them a check so that they could see that it was cashed or it wasn't cashed as a receipt. But if it isn't cashed, then where is the money? Is it on your ledger? So I just like to put it on the ledger as a credit, notify them that they have a credit on their ledger of whatever the dollar amount may be, $6, whatever it is, as effective as of such and such date. If you get into an eviction trial, for the most part, what I've seen happen is I've seen your legal counsel go ahead and calculate that factor in there as a rent credit and then help you create your 3-day notice accordingly.
Okay. And then is the interest calculated, is it like compound interest or is it simple interest every year?
It's simple interest every year.
Okay, so if my security deposit is $1,500,
You're
I'm
going to
paying
pay
1,500 bucks.
4.32% times 4.32% gives you that dollar amount. That's how much you're crediting them.
Okay, so am I doing the interest based on the base every single year or adding the interest as it goes?
Not adding the interest as it goes, giving them on the base amount of $1,500 every month.
Got it. That was actually something I wanted to know.
That's okay. That's what I'm
This
here
has
for.
been helpful.
And you guys remember, she doesn't practice property management. That's why we make such a good team.
I believe if your lease is mid-year, you prorate the secured you prorate the interest on it.
That is correct. It does require a prorate. Larso, Arlene is our guru with Larso. Larso pays security deposit after they live there for 1 year. So they have to live there for 1 year before you're required to pay that.
Yes. That's all this bulletin actually makes it helpful because I never knew if it was simple interest or not, and I couldn't find it. And they finally put it in here. Like I'm reading it right now. They never
Teamwork,
really
baby.
had that clearly in there.
Teamwork.
Thank you.
No problem. Does Larso apply to unincorporated area of LA County? Not necessarily, but it could. So let me say it this way. If you aren't governed by LARSO, you're probably governed by DCBA. And if you're not governed by either one of those, you're most likely governed by LAHD, because in LA County now you can run, but you can't hide. Usually the unincorporated cities, and there are 144 of them. I used to know the list verbatim, but I haven't used it in a long time. Those are governed by the DCBA, which covers the unincorporated cities. Now LAHD is now getting involved, as you know, and they're getting their foot in the pond and getting us registering with them. I would guess that they're going to have inspections coming, but you know how that is. They get us in there and then they start changing the rules. So get ready for that. We know it's coming. Miriam, you have a question. You have a single tenant that's lived in the 2-bedroom unit for over 46 years. She came with the purchase. Her rent is $770. Market rent is $2,800. She's in her 70s. I don't, I think that says I don't have a written rental agreement. What do you think I should do? Honestly, burn it down. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Sasha's like, don't say stuff like that, Patty.
Although I hear people tell me it all the time. They go, I should just burn it. I go, don't do that. But I understand
We
this.
don't look good in an orange jumpsuit is our number one theory here. So no, don't burn it down. Honestly, if you want to get her out and she's protected in all those directions, I would contact Sasha and see if you can't come with a cash for keys agreement. You may have to pull out a loan to hit her number, but you'll never make it match as far as repairs. I mean, you can't afford to do a water heater in her unit. You don't collect enough rent. Sasha, what do you think?
Well, I don't know what the question was, okay? Do I get a rental agreement? What do you think I should do? I mean, you could try to get a rental agreement, but it has to be materially the same as the terms that you don't know because there's no written agreement. So you're basically on a month-to-month tenancy with her, and you do the repairs that you need to do by code as required. I wouldn't do anything more unless that's what you want to do with your property. But you're sort of you're there. If you want to buy her out, she's paying $707 a rent. It's gonna be tricky, but you never know. We don't say hoarder, we say pack rat.
That's correct, Sasha.
It's very hard to evict tenants for that kind of nuisance.
Being a pack rat, it has to be involved with health and safety. It has to have multiple things going on for them to be successful in an eviction for a pack rat. Remember, it's a mental disability, you guys. So you're poking the ADA in the eye.
I'm not saying to not create a rental agreement. You can create one and hope she signs it, but she's not obligated to sign it if it's not materially the same as her rental agreement. But you don't have that rental agreement. So it's sort of your word against hers. And if you try to evict her for not signing a lease renewal, for a woman in her 70s paying $700 a month, you're not going to get very far with a jury.
No, you're going to look like a martyr.
Yeah. So, but the pack rat issue, that's something that you have to give. If you have a tenant that has that issue, you have to give notices. You have to give 3-day notices to perform or quit. You have to put them on notice of things. You have to give them the opportunity to address this. And you have to have very good documentation that you've given them opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to address it. And typically, if something's blocking a window, they can probably address that.
Right. So you're looking at between 5 to 7 3-day curable breach of covenants. If they're on Section 8, you're looking at 30-day curable breach of covenants. You're going to need 5 to 7 of them consecutively in order to prove the nuisance. This isn't a joke. You have to be like clockwork here. So if it's a 3-day cure quit, you're immediately going back. And before you do the quit, you want to talk to your legal counsel, because at that point, that's the guillotine. Okay, they either need to have enough ammunition or you need to get more. But once that guillotine falls, if you dropped it at the wrong time, you may have to start all over again. So very important that before you do the quit, you talk to whoever's going to be representing you in court and take direction from them as to whether they want 2 more notices or you're okay, go ahead and do that quit. Bye, Arlene. I saw you telling us hi and bye and thank you. Okay, Miriam, I'm going to be very careful what I say to you because I'm a real estate broker, but I don't practice sales transactions. If you feel like the rules in the city that you do business in are more restrictive than you can do business, then yes, it makes sense to get out of that city. And I'll leave my statement at that. All right, everybody. If nobody has anything else, I really don't want to keep Sasha. I know how busy she is. And Sasha, please feel free to join us anytime you want to join us. We do this every Wednesday. So if you have like some new, hey, I need a whole group of people that I need to talk to and explain this to and make sure that they understand, if you feel free, you're more than welcome to join us. We love having you.
Thank you. I appreciate the invite.
No problem. And I will go ahead, Julia. What are your 2 questions? And you got your bag, yes?
Yes, I have my bag. Thank you, Patty.
No problem. What can I answer for you, darling?
Oh, you guys, when you were talking about interest, was that just for LA or is that
That's for LA City. RSO properties specifically require that you pay interest to your tenant annually on the security deposit.
Okay, got it. Perfect. That doesn't apply to me. And then my second question is, since you were saying like non-permitted units, what if you just have a non-permitted room? This is an older home I bought from the original owner. It says, like on Redfin, it's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, but like one of the rooms looks a little like, could not be permitted. Is that, I mean, it's not like the whole house, like, it's a house.
Deep breath. do a little research on yourself. Go find, go pull with the city and find out how many bedrooms are permitted. Okay. And then
Okay.
you'll be able to answer your own question. Go see what it says on title. Go see if that's changed. Because usually when you do a permit addition and you add another bedroom to a property, the government then reassesses the taxes so that you pay more money annually on the more square footage you added. So if they didn't do that, the chances are it's not permitted. I hope that makes sense to you.
Got it.
Sometimes if
But
we
if,
understand the why behind it, it makes sense to why the owner didn't do it or they did do it. Make sense?
yeah, but what is it? The tenant can't come after me saying like, oh, we want all our rent back, because I mean, and technically it's a house, not, it's just maybe a questionable bedroom.
They could come back to you maybe for a portion of a rent or all of the rent. I'm not going to answer that. Sasha's still on here. She may be able to answer that.
It depends on the jurisdiction. It depends on the attorney.
She's going to be in San Bernardino or Riverside, so out of LA.
It still could be an issue because part of it is uninhabitable, for the sense that you don't have a permit for this extra bedroom, and so it would either be good to permit it, or you might want to, I don't know, if like ending the tenancy if it's not really a problem. You don't want to highlight it as a problem. But I can't tell you that it wouldn't be a problem one day if a tenant got an attorney and the attorney said, look, you have an unpermitted bedroom here. We want money.
Usually all these things come about when there's some kind of litigation going on. Usually it stems around an eviction. And what happens is your tenant goes to opposing counsel, a tenant attorney, and they say, yeah, my tenant's evicting me because I didn't pay the rent. And they may pull title and see, well, how many bedrooms do you have there? And they're like, we have 5. And they're like, well, on title, it only says 3. So then that triggers that attorney to go down that rabbit hole to look at your permitting. Does that make sense? How quick and easy is it for us to pull title? It's public record. Most attorneys are also real estate brokers. So with that being said, it is very easy for them to go down that rabbit hole, and it only takes them seconds.
Got it. Thank you both.
No problem.
I'm going to pop off, but have a good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you again for joining us, and please feel free anytime you want. We'd love to have you, and I'm sure you'll be hearing from our members in the future.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye. All right, you guys, I'm going to stay on. I know there was a couple of more questions. How do I get a copy of my certificate of occupancy? Go to the city. They're the ones that gave you the final building permit. Okay, final building permit's going to have your certificate of occupancy. It's going to tell you what your square footage is, how many bedrooms you have. Okay. Building and safety will also be able to tell you.
Hey, Patty, I have a question. It's Christina.
Hey, girlie, what you got? Where'd you
All
go?
right. So I
Okay.
heard that FEMA is asking landlords to post your property onto their database, and they're willing to pay up to 18 months of whatever your requested rent is. However, I heard there's a caveat that the landlord is not allowed to do a background check. Now, does FEMA do a background check, or there's no background checks at all?
When FEMA places you in emergency housing, that's just it. Is you're taking them with the government, you're getting 18 months at that, and that's all you're agreeing to. At 19 months, you're probably going to be evicting, but we don't know. Usually people that are placed with FEMA have a financial burden. Want me to say that again? Want me to say that again? Usually people that are seeking assistance from FEMA to help them find housing have a financial burden. In other words, they're low income. They don't have renter's insurance. They may have a job, but they don't have a career. Is what I'm saying clicking? Okay, look at the areas that burned. Altadena, Pasadena.
Yep.
These are high dollar areas, high dollar neighborhoods, meaning these people didn't have jobs. They had careers. Okay. Remember, I have family, direct family that's been affected by this. So, and they're currently living in a hotel, insurance company's paying for it. And I got a question for all of you. She doesn't necessarily want to move back into her house because for the next 3 to 5 years, she's going to live in a construction zone. Oh, did you hear that? Okay. Her other question to me was, do I rent it now to somebody that's building their house or do I sell it and get out of there? And I don't know what to tell her because part of me says sell it and get out of there because in 5 years from now, she's going to own the oldest house in the neighborhood. She's going to own the dinosaur of the neighborhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want to own that house in 10 years. That's a given. So for some of us affected by the fire, we're trying to figure out the best way to get out from under it. Make sense?
Yep.
So everybody's not in the fire in the same aspect. And like Sasha was saying, you guys, pay attention to her, okay? And Holly, I'll answer your question about a sheriff lockout. But what Sasha is saying is the reason this isn't sticking with city council is because nobody's pushing for it because the people that want this weren't affected by the fires.
Right.
All right. Now,
Now,
let me, oh, go ahead.
There's a part 2. Sorry.
Go ahead. You're fine.
It was to when you were talking with Sasha about increasing your rent every year, no matter if it's just $20. Now, with the tenant that I have now, I went up close to 9% with her rent last year, and it was a pretty big bump.
Okay.
And she's already, like, right now she's paying at or slightly above market rent since rents have gone down. Should I still increase just $20 or just keep her because I'm really happy with her and I don't want to piss her off?
I understand that. But if you just do a $20 rent increase, what you could tell her is, hey, it's time for your rent increase. And you've been such a great tenant. I really don't want to do an increase, but I have to. It's part of my job as a landlord. So we're doing a very low increase this year. Looking forward to you renewing contract or whatever it is you're going to say, or a profitable year in 2025.
Got it. Okay.
So you're still raising $20 with the excuse of, I didn't want to raise your rent, but I still have to do my job.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The price of everything's going up. Postage, gasoline, paper, ink, so.
Okay.
Right. Right. And look at it this way. I about fell over backwards when I went through fast food the other day. Okay. I wanted a cheeseburger. And I eat like a bird, for those of you that know me. So I drove through, I got a cheeseburger, fries, and a drink, and I'm not going to eat all that food, okay? Do you know it was $19.40 for a cheeseburger, fries, and a drink at a drive-through? It was $20 for just me. Wow.
Hey, Patty, can I ask you a quick question?
You can ask me whatever you want.
Okay. LA City, it's El Sereno, but it's a single family home owned by an individual. We want to give 90+ days notice to raise the rent from $2,000 to $3,500. Actually, I did it in the middle of December. So way before everything that's going on right now. So
What county is it in?
it's in Los Angeles County.
Rescind the notice.
Huh?
Rescind the notice.
For a single family home?
Rescind the notice.
Why?
Because you're still raising the rents over 10% during a state of emergency.
I served them before the state of emergency.
But the increase takes effect during the state of emergency, and that could put you in an orange jumpsuit.
I think it's going to be April 1st.
You said 90 days. Hang on.
Yeah, we served
You
them.
served that on December what?
Hold on one second.
Okay. Teamwork.
My assistant's looking.
for Jasper, right?
Yeah, Jasper. I know I served it before, after Christmas.
Here's what I'm going to tell you. If they extend the state of emergency past March, then rescind it. If they don't, I just want to ask an attorney if they'll represent you in court. If they will, then I want to move forward and leave it in play.
April.
Okay, so it goes into effect April, and I served it when, Victoria? I served it November 11th, and it goes into effect April 1st.
So you gave more than 90 days.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I like to give at least 15 extra days on 30.
Okay. Okay, let's do this, okay? Let's readdress this in the first part of March, no later than the 7th. So that's me telling you, call me by March 6th. Let's see if they extended it. Because if they extend it, I want you to rescind because I just don't want to risk it. Make sense?
And then I have to reissue another 90-day all the way out?
It's better than a $10,000 fine and 6 months in jail.
No, it's not.
Look at it, look at it this way. There's no case law, and I don't want them to use you as an example.
I was going to say, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Well,
I
that's,
err on the side of caution because I don't want to tell you you look good in orange. That's all.
yeah. All right. Thanks.
Chris is laughing at us. and he may have an opinion on it too. I say it's a risk. It's a big risk.
It was served way before.
I get that it was served before, but it's implemented after, and that might make it okay. But if there's still a state of emergency, that's where I'm gonna go. I don't like it.
Wow.
You're in the devil's cauldron. The kids these days, they say something. It's FAFO. You know what that means?
No, what?
F around and find out. I don't want to.
All right. Now I just served another notice, 9.5% today,
In what county?
Los Angeles.
You're fine. Let it sit as long as it's an SFR exempt from statewide and exempt from a city ordinance.
It is.
The moratorium currently ends on March 8th. I don't know if they'll extend it. I'm going to assume that they're not because there isn't an army of people that are in dire straits because of the state of emergency.
Yeah.
I can't, and I keep using this as an example. Maybe it's not the best example, but George Clooney isn't on the news standing in lines getting pants. Okay.
Yeah, I have 2 properties in South Pass that 160%, because it hasn't been on for a year, is lower than the market rent. So my people, so let's wait till March 8th and see what happens. So we're holding off on that for those 2 properties.
Right. And I would err on the side of caution. None of us want to be made an example out of.
Yeah. So it's just sitting there for right now.
I got you. Moratorium ends. I told you March 8th. There is no one at my YMCA coming to get assistance. They have piles of stuff and no customers. Everybody hearing that? So YMCA took a whole bunch of donations for fire victims, and they have all this stuff to donate and no victims to give it to. Paying attention? This is what Sasha was trying to talk about, is they keep trying to throw something and city council is like, forget it. You guys are ridiculous. All the gimmies, because that's what we call the generation of gimme this and gimme that and gimme. All the gimmies are out there going, gimme. And we're like going, no. Okay, so that's what's happening right now. Gimmies have their hand out, and the rest of us are like, I don't think so. Not today, not this time. Which really cracks me up, and I want to ask you guys something that's going to make you go, huh, Patty, I didn't think about that. If we raised $65 million for the fires in Hawaii in 6 months, and we raised over $200 million for the LA fires in less than 48 hours, where's that money going to go? I'm not asking, I'm asking you, I'm not telling you. I don't know the answer to the question, but I want you to keep asking the question. Okay, where's that money going?
No one knows.
And we don't want to own the oldest house in the nicest, newest neighborhood. We'll then own the dinosaur, right? That comes from a real estate perspective. So if you own something in that area and you know that they're going to build a brand new everything all around you, you may want to consider that. I'd talk to your real estate broker, talk to your CPA, talk to your people. If you got something right there in the midst of it, you may want to have conversations with these people and come up with a plan of action now rather than 10 years from now after the boat left. I understand it depends on if we're talking about land price, appreciation, or rental value. I have a standing home in Altaloma. 6 of them on the whole block made it and nothing else. 4 blocks. Would you keep it? Would you rent it? Owner doesn't want to live there because they don't want to live in a construction zone for the next 3 to 5 years. We all know that's what's going to happen, right? So we wouldn't want to sign up to live there.
Another question about Altadena.
Yes.
A house way up in Pasadena, right by the Eaton
The
canyon.
Eaton fire. Yeah.
Smoke got inside all windows, you know, there's some little bit of black up on the ceilings, walls. They have a 1-year-old. They said they didn't feel safe coming back to the house because it may be toxic. We got a quote from a remediation company to come in and wipe down everything with sponges and anti-smoke and all this other stuff. So the question is, and I believe I know the answer, but the landlord needs to pay that $5,000 before they move in to go back, right?
More than likely.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm laughing, you guys, is for a whole nother reason, okay? Recently, and mind you, I go to the trade shows just like all you guys do. So ServPro gives me a bag, you know, with a box of Kleenex and the chip clip and the little fire sponge piece in it, you know?
Fire sponge. Yeah.
Fire sponge. My sister's birthday is right after New Year's, and this year she celebrated her 70th birthday. So I drove all the way up to her house to celebrate with her. And we started drinking, and she decided that she was going to put a bigger log in the fireplace. So we have a new rule. If you have to use the hand truck to bring it in the house, it doesn't go in the fireplace. Because we made a fire too big for the firebox. And then I ended up with a bunch of smoke damage. So I'm going to tell you guys right now, they make a dry cleaning sponge. It's for, it's beige. You can buy them at Home Depot. They call it a dry cleaning sponge. That's what removes the soot. I learned that the hard way, the easy way, however you want to describe it. Those things are godsends, just so you know. Everybody should have one in their toolbox in case there's a problem at a property. But you're more than likely going to need to address that, especially because they have a small child. It's a carcinogen. Okay. Think of it as smoke. So it's a carcinogen. And there's such a thing as third-hand smoke. Okay. And I'm going to explain it to you in a different manner, but you'll understand what I mean. Okay. You know how if you go in a house where somebody's smoking like a chimney in there, you get all the nicotine residue and all that crap and it stinks really bad. And over the course of time, you can paint over that, but you may not get rid of it because it may heat up in there and then it emits those carcinogens again, right? Oh, that's how that happens. Yes, that's exactly how that happens. So I definitely would be talking to a restoration company because if cigarette smoke and tobacco smoke and marijuana smoke is a carcinogen, why isn't fire smoke?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. I told the owners, like, you want to pay $5,000 now, or 2 years? They say my 1-year-old now has asthma because you wouldn't do something.
You want to pay $5,000 now, or do you want to pay $35,000 in 6 months? Or how about $250,000?
Yeah.
And that's more logical, more realistic. So I would definitely call a restoration company. If it gets to the point where what you're having to do is fairly expensive, you may want to consider an insurance claim that is something that is possible. But with what's going on in LA right now, I wouldn't recommend it. They'll probably cancel you for filing. If I could give the name of a restoration company, I would suggest using PRC Restoration. They have a 1 hour response time. They're actually doing a fire smoke job for me today. The reason I recommend PRC Restoration Company is for one reason and one reason only. Okay. I train their staff. In other words, they don't talk to your tenant. They'll talk to your insurance company directly, so you don't have to. That way your claim is less likely to be denied. But PRC is the best. See, now other people, they do free estimates if you're a Widget's Way member. They have a 1 hour response time. I mean, I've really worked with a company to give us what we want when it comes to restoration.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah. May not lost your house, I tell them, but you know, you got to play by the rules. And the car agreement actually does have something in there about that. Then the whole situation about rent, you know, do they have to give them credit for rent? Do they got to pay for a hotel?
Well, in the event that it's deemed that that is uninhabitable and that is a problem, then you're exactly correct. You need to treat it the same way you would mold. Yes, you need to put them in a hotel. You need to give them reasonable accommodations. They can file a claim with their renter's insurance, and then you're just paying their deductible. That's my wink wink for hit the easy button, okay? But then you're handling it in that manner, and it's less evasive on the owner and on you. I love it when a tenant has insurance. I always go hit the easy button because it's just so much easier for us when they have all the protections and all of that in play. Then it's like, my deductible's $100, and I'm like, we'll pay that, no problem. Here you go. So it makes the transition and the nightmare just easier to handle when they're insured.
Good point. Good point.
I do make it a requirement. Somebody's going to ask right now if we can enforce it. Yes, you can, unless you're in LARSO. If you're in RSO, you can't add additional funds or expenses unless the tenant signs and agrees to it. And here's the reality of what I just said. No tenant is going to sign and agree to spend more money. Okay, just saying. I don't know about you guys, but no tenant I know is going to sign and agree to spend more money. All right, anybody have anything else? I don't want to keep us long. It was great having Sasha, and then you guys need to know this. Guess who I got coming next week? Nobody? Nobody? There's no way you would know who this is. So I have Christy Kelly coming to join us. So for those of you that don't know who Christy Kelly is, she worked for the California Apartment Association for several years. After she left the California Apartment Association, she went to go work for AGLA and worked for them for several years. And then now she's off doing other things, which she'll talk to us about. But she's going to talk to us about leasing and fair housing. Remember, she sits on the board for fair housing at Riverside. So she's got a foot in the door in lots of places, and we want to pick her brain and ask her what we should be watching out for. Okay, Sydney, I'll look at that shortly. I got you. And just make sure that it also has to go to a municipality. And if you need disclosure served with the notice, it's going to have to go to. Example, in LARSO, if you serve a 3-day pay rent or quit, you also have to serve the tenant rights pamphlet as well, so that they have all that information. I will look at it, I promise. All right, you guys, I'm going to get off of here. I don't want to take your time. Please join us next week. We have Christy Kelly in the flesh joining us. I'm excited about that. And thank you guys for suggesting having Sasha. I'm glad that she was able to help all of us. And if we need her, we know how to find her. I'm glad you like your purse. Bye, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.